following program does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of the City of Oceanside, its elected officials, KOCT, its board of directors, or staff.
Community Health Matters was made possible by a grant from the Tri-City Healthcare District and with additional support from Tri-City Medical Center.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Community Health Matters. Today's show is the first in a three-part series about diabetes. We'll learn how to identify if you have or are at risk for this disease, what is the diagnosis and treatment for diabetes, and how to live with it. Community Health Matters is produced by Tri-City Medical Center in cooperation with KOCT. I'm your host, Ricardo Berron, and I'd like to remind our viewers that this show is available in English and Spanish and also available online at koct.org. It's viewable on your iPhone, tablet, or desktop and easy to share with friends and family. Now, let's get started. Last year, the total cost of diagnosed diabetes in the United States was $245 billion. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention has reported in 2011, 8.3% of the U.S. population was affected by diabetes. And what's even more worrisome is that 1 out of 3 adults in the country could be diagnosed with this disease by the year 2050. But what exactly is diabetes? What causes it? How can it be treated? Jorge Gaspar, Clinical Integrations Manager of Vista Community Clinic, will help us with these issues. Jorge, thank you for being here with us. What exactly is diabetes?
So diabetes is, that's kind of a two-part answer, and I know we're going to touch upon it a little bit later, but might as well go into it now, right? So usually diabetes is separated into two different types, diabetes type 1, diabetes type 2. Diabetes type 1 was formerly known as the young person's diabetes or children's diabetes. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. Because diabetes type 2 affects children much more commonly now. But diabetes type 1 now is known as autoimmune diabetes. And what this means is that there is an attack of one's own body on the cells that produce insulin within our own bodies. So the beta cells in our pancreas produce insulin normally when we eat sugary foods or carbohydrate-filled foods. And unfortunately, our body attacks these cells, destroys them, and we no longer have the ability to produce insulin. That's the type 1 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is more, to be more exact, is a insulin resistance, which means that our body does produce insulin, but the tissues, the muscles and the peripheral tissues can't absorb, they can't absorb the sugar that's in our bloodstream because the little doors that allow the sugar to go in, which is where the insulin sticks to, are broken. So that's really the fundamental difference between diabetes.
Is this disease more prevalent in certain ethnic groups? And if so, why?
So there are some ethnic groups that are very susceptible to diabetes. Particularly Hispanics, we have a very large incidence of diabetes. American Indians are also a population that has a high amount of diabetics. I think there's a tribe in Yuma that has 1 out of every 2 people are diabetics or something like that. Wow. It's a really high incidence. African Americans are also more predisposed to having diabetes, but Hispanics do have a very high incidence.
So now tell us what causes it. Is it inherited or it can be triggered by lifestyle?
So it's multifactorial, which usually means that everything can cause diabetes in the sense of what causes it is able to cause it. Let me be more specific on that.
Yes, please.
So if your grandma had diabetes and your parents had diabetes, then there is a high likelihood of you developing diabetes, regardless of your lifestyle. If you eat right, you exercise really healthy, but there's a long line of history of diabetes in your family, then you are at risk regardless of what you do. Now, if you don't take care of yourself and you don't eat right and you don't exercise, couple that with the family history of diabetes, then your risk is increased exponentially. On the other side of the coin, you have those people whose parents were perfectly healthy, whose grandparents were perfectly healthy, but they themselves don't take care of themselves. Like they eat really bad, they don't exercise at all, they live a very sedentary lifestyle, they make all the wrong decisions basically. So those people are actually at increased risk of having diabetes too, even without that family history. And unfortunately, what we see nowadays is that risk is augmented in our younger population. So whereas before you could say, oh, they're 30 years old, they have to change their lifestyle. Now we're finding that they're 10 years old, they better start changing their lifestyle now, or they're going to develop diabetes for certain in the future.
Are there symptoms that non-diagnosed diabetics can watch for as possible signs of being pre-diabetic or a diabetic?
Sure. There are some kind of telltale signs that you might be developing diabetes. There's usually the first symptoms that appear are the patients get really thirsty. They drink water constantly, but it's not that they just want to drink water, it's that they feel the need to be drinking water constantly. Along with that, there's a really high frequency of urination. They tend to go to the bathroom quite often. What happens is even though they're drinking a lot of water, they're still peeing out a lot of water. And it's kind of uncommon because sometimes what happens is these people are urinating frequently even without drinking a lot of water. So that's kind of where the mismatch lies. Also, they develop what is called polyphagia, which is they get really hungry. So you might say, well, the patient is really overweight. What are they doing eating more? Well, it's not really up to them. It's the body's own response, and they really want to eat constantly. And then the last part that starts happening is they start losing weight, but without doing anything. So you might say, oh, a miracle diet. No, that's not a miracle diet. That means you're getting diabetes. That's a bad thing. So they eat constantly, they drink a lot of water, and they don't exercise, yet they're losing weight at a very rapid pace, and that's really troubling because that means they're probably already getting diabetes type 2.
Is there a cure to this disease?
Not to type 2 diabetes, no. It can be controlled. You can go into a type of remission of diabetes type 2, which just means that you're able to get off all medications, you're able to not have to do much except diet and exercise. I mean, in fact, the first step usually that we tell patients is diet and exercise, and that'll help control your blood sugar levels so you don't go into the medication stages. So to answer the question more succinctly, no, there is no cure, but you can control it in a very good manner.
We have about 45 seconds for this segment to end, but I want to ask you, what does it take to determine whether a person is or isn't pre-diabetic or diabetic?
So pre-diabetes usually means the person's young. Usually, nowadays, it's usually young because our phrase, kids are starting younger and younger nowadays to develop diabetes. They're usually obese or heavy set, and they have these pigmentations around their neck or their under their armpits that's really dark, and that's the first signs of a development of a resistance to insulin.
Well, great information, Jorge. Thank you for being here with us today. We have to take a short break, but don't go away because there's more of Community Health Matters. We're going to continue talking about the diabetes.
Add seeds to your meals and snacks for an easy and tasty way to include healthy protein in your diet. 2 tablespoons of sunflower, sesame, and pumpkin seeds will respectively provide you with 3.5, 3.2, and 5 grams of protein, in addition to crunch and flavor.
Many uninsured Americans are receiving free eye exams that may save their sight. Eye Care America's Glaucoma Eye Care program offers eye exams for those at risk for glaucoma. The program is for U.S. citizens or legal residents who have not had an eye exam in a year or more and are determined to be at risk. Those eligible receive a free eye exam. To learn more, call 1-800-391-EYES or visit www.eyecareamerica.org.
Welcome back to Community Health Matters. I'm your host, Ricardo Berron, and our topic today is diabetes, identifying the problem. Scientific studies estimate that 15% to 30% of people with prediabetes will develop type 2 diabetes within 5 years if they don't commit to changing their lifestyle and improving their health. Jorge Gaspar, Clinical Integrations Manager at Vista Community Clinic, will tell us all about the different types of diabetes. Thank you, Jorge, for being with us here today. And what exactly is prediabetes?
So prediabetes is a term that's utilized to single out people who are not leading good lifestyles and are developing insulin resistance at a young age. So the problem is that before you used to have prediabetes in older patients, and nowadays we have really young patients that are developing prediabetic syndrome. So one of the things that we see is, like we said before, an increase in insulin resistance, and that's physically seen by having these really dark spots around the neck and around the underarms in these young patients. Typically, these young patients are also overweight or obese. They lead sedentary lifestyles. They don't exercise at all. It's all TV, computers, and video games nowadays. And they also have really deplorable nutritional habits. You'll see them usually drinking soda, eating chips, things we know we're not supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, these teens nowadays, if they don't take care of themselves, they're down the path to diabetes type 2. It's terrible. Diabetes type 2 is important that it's differentiated between diabetes type 1 because a lot of people say they kind of lump diabetes all together, and that's not the case. Okay. Diabetes type 1, it's kind of unavoidable. Since it's an autoimmune disorder, it's kind of, you're genetically predisposed to it. Same as diabetes type 2, but you can't avoid diabetes type 1 with diet and exercise. You can't, but you can avoid diabetes type 2 with diet and exercise, which is why we stress the importance that you start young, and that way you carry on that healthy lifestyle all throughout your adulthood.
How would a doctor determine what is your case, either 1 or 2?
So usually type 1s are usually really young kids. That's the truth about it, because the autoimmune system kind of attacks you at a younger age. So there's certain tests that can run, like certain markers that are run to develop if you're a type 1 or a type 2. And the type 2 is the typical person who, overweight, no exercise, bad diet, and that just leads to them being a diabetes type 2 when they're older.
But can a doctor diagnose you? Let's say you're going for a regular checkup, and then whoa, it pops up that
diabetes.
Yeah, you have diabetes.
So what can usually happen in those cases is that if you have no family history of diabetes, let's say that, and your BMI, which is your body mass index, is over 25, which is considered overweight, you come into the doctor's office and you will get usually a lipid check to see how your cholesterol is doing. You'll get a nice little blood work to see how all your hemoglobin values, everything's, and included in that test usually is the glucose test. So if you get a random glucose test done to you that has nothing to do with diabetes, and that value comes out really elevated, that's a warning sign, and we have to figure out what's going on. If that's the case, then we usually do what's called a hemoglobin A1C test. That's a very specific test testing for diabetes. Yeah. And we do that test, and then we can determine, where you're at. If you have a really high value, that means that you've probably been diabetic for a while, and you haven't noticed, and you're not taking care of yourself.
What are the most common complications of diabetes?
And there's some really horrific ones, and I won't go into too much detail. I don't want to scare anybody, but diabetes type 2 affects your whole body. Number one thing that it does, it causes diabetic retinopathy, which causes blindness. People go blind from diabetes. The sugar accumulates in the eye, and this damages the nerve, and you're done. You're not seeing ever. You also have problems with your peripheral circulation. So what that means is that the arteries and little bloodways in your extremities suffer, and they get really small and congested, and there's no more blood flow. So it's really common for diabetics to have problems of circulation in their feet. And since the sugar also damages the nerves, then you have two problems. One, diabetics don't feel their feet, so they can have a cut and they never felt the cut. And since that cut is there and there's not good circulation in the foot, then your body can't form a scar or a scab. So guess what? That wound's wide open for all the bacteria to come in and infect your foot. And when that happens, you develop gangrene and, off comes the foot. So it's a real problem because diabetes, if left uncontrolled, a lot of people lose their limbs. I've seen people lose up to both legs from diabetes alone, which is a big problem. You also have the
I
other
think
problem.
you really scared our audience.
Well, I think I scared them enough. The last one I think is kidney complications is the biggest fear of most people. Diabetes affects the kidney, and you can lead to renal failure and have to be in dialysis, which is a really traumatic experience to go through. So
different change of lifestyle if you're under dialysis, right?
It completely changes what you are, and the life expectancy isn't very high either.
Wow. Is there a type of diabetes that affects pregnant women in particular?
There is that type of diabetes called gestational diabetes. It typically affects, unfortunately, Hispanic women, so be careful out there if you're pregnant. Gestational diabetes means that there's, a tolerance to insulin in general, and the problem with that is that it kind of has this negative effect on the baby that's being formed. It causes big babies, and by big babies, I mean they're usually weighing a lot more than a normal baby. 4, 5, 6 pounds, sometimes more. So that means that the mom cannot have this baby through a normal birthing method because the baby is too large to fit through the birth canal. So they have to go through a C-section. The baby can suffer if there's a C-section being done. The mom can stay with diabetes because sometimes these mothers develop gestational diabetes, and once they have their baby, the diabetes goes away. But other times the diabetes can stay, and that mother just develops diabetes for the rest of their lives.
And that was during labor. What about the fetus?
So the fetus, high blood sugar levels can be teratogenic, but that just means is that there could be malformations due to the high blood sugar levels of the mother. But the other problem is that the baby can also come out with really high blood sugar levels themselves, and that can cause problems either by developing type 1 diabetes, which is not always the case, or that child itself can be predisposed to having type 2 diabetes in the future.
Wow. Well, thank you, Jorge. That was really shocking information. I really think you scared our audience. But I mean, it is the truth. I mean, we got to take care of ourselves, right? We're going to watch what we eat. We're going to watch our lifestyle. We have to be healthy, and we have to exercise.
I think the biggest thing is that we have to be aware that this starts off young. So just because a kid is 9 years old and they're a little bit roly-poly and they're like, oh, he's cute because he's a little bit, look at his cheeks. Well, that's not usually a good thing because that child can rapidly develop type 2 diabetes as they get older. So if we teach them good nutrition habits, avoid those juices, drink some water, avoid those sodas, drink some water, eat healthy when they're young, they'll grow up to be healthy adults.
Well, thank you. Let's take a quick break. But we'll be right back with more health information for you on Community Health Matters. Don't go anywhere.
Including balancing exercises in your daily routine can help prevent a fall and potentially serious injuries. Standing on one foot, doing back and side leg raises, and walking heel to toe as if you were walking on a balance beam will strengthen your lower body and improve your balance.
For the millions living with COPD, breathing becomes a struggle. COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. You may have heard of it as chronic bronchitis or emphysema. Over time, you feel like you're breathing through a straw. It's the 4th leading cause of death in the US, and it took my grandmother. If you're over 35 and have ever smoked, you could be at risk. Good news is, you can improve your symptoms. I'm Danica Patrick, and I drive for COPD. Join the movement at driveforcopd.com, take our screening questionnaire today, and talk to your doctor.
Whoa, dude. You thinking what I'm thinking? Go. Going in. Integrity, Pass it on. Save the date. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Cancer is a big idea for a small child.
She dreams of being a figure skater. We're trying to figure out what to do next.
Each school day, 2 classrooms of children are diagnosed with cancer.
The doctor said there's hope.
I'll be brave, Mommy.
If I could just take her place.
It's okay, Daddy.
Only research cures childhood cancer. Give today. You can help fund this life-saving research to conquer childhood cancer. Visit curesearch.org today.
Hi, I'm your host, Ricardo Berron, and you're watching Community Health Matters. Dealing with diabetes shouldn't be a permanent burden. Fortunately, there's many ways to cope with this disease and continue enjoying the activities you like. Less stress, healthy eating habits, exercise, and a regular care routine are the best allies for a diabetic. I'm joined by nutritionist Benilda Milan Aglagup. Thank you for being here with us. And I want to start asking you, what would you recommend a person with diabetes to do on a daily basis to stay healthy?
Living with diabetes is difficult. So we want to make sure that they're eating healthy, following a meal plan that includes whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and low protein, and of course milk that's low in fats. We also want to make sure that they exercise regularly, they check their blood sugars on a daily basis, and they also make sure that they keep their appointments, so if they have any questions with the doctor, they could ask.
Well, I see here that you brought examples of the type of diet a diabetic should follow.
Yes. And so for an example, we want to make sure that everybody knows that carbohydrates are the sources that will affect your blood sugars, meaning raise the blood sugar levels. So for breakfast, we have a half a cup of oatmeal, hard-boiled egg, 8 ounces of milk, and some nuts if you want extra protein, and some cinnamon just to give it some more flavor.
What about for lunch?
And for lunch,
I'm getting hungry.
we have a sandwich that has turkey, slices of tomatoes, lettuce, celery, carrots, and if you want a fruit, apple, so the size, a small fruit is what we recommend, and the size about my fist is what is an appropriate amount. And so, bottle of water, and that's it for lunch.
And I can see here that there's more portions of carbohydrates than anything else. Is that correct?
Yes. We could count it out if you like. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 servings of carbohydrates.
Good. What about for dinner?
For dinner, we have, this is pork loin, green beans, a 1/3 cup of pasta, salad, a dinner roll, and again, water or possibly coffee if you like, but typically that's for breakfast.
What do you recommend for people to add in their meals or like their water in order to sweeten it? Any types of sugar, artificial sugars, blue agave, honey?
I usually recommend that just a hint of lemon, just to give it a little bit flavor. You could put a little bit of agave if you like to. It's a natural sugar, so we tend to recommend that you just limit it or just have, again, other flavors that won't increase your blood sugars.
And I love your recommendations, but we see that people more commonly eat junk food because it's either easier or less expensive, right?
Yes, that's correct. I see that a lot, and we want to make sure that if they do eat outside, that they're choosing healthier options. And there is a lot of healthy options, for example, salads in fast food places. And you could also just limit the amount that you eat. Instead of maybe getting a regular meal, maybe a happy meal for kids, and that will decrease the amount of fats, carbohydrates, and of course increase your energy level, because sometimes eating too much fat and just carbohydrates kind of weighs down the person.
Now let's talk about mental stress. How can reducing it help better control a person's blood glucose levels?
Well, mental stress or any type of stress, physical or emotional, will definitely increase it. That's just a natural reaction. So ways to reduce your stress levels can be walking, yoga. A lot of people like to yoga, meditation, and definitely talking to somebody, opening up to somebody that you trust to make sure that they also understand that you're going through a lot of stress, and hopefully they could help you to reduce your stress. Also, the best thing is sometimes just taking a warm bath.
That's a good one. And how can family members help a diabetic patient in this process?
A lot. If you know that you have a person with diabetes in your family, learn as much as you can. Learning more than you can with, in fact, of just going to the doctor's appointments, talking to them, asking them specifically how they're feeling about the condition, what's easy for them to cope with, what's difficult for them to cope with, and also just trying to make sure that you're there to support them. And whatever they're feeling, whatever they have questions about, hopefully you could answer with the help with other people, meaning the medical people, nurses, and just seeking out classes or just support groups.
And is it true that it's fine for diabetics to drink diet sodas?
Is it true? It can be true in, again, a small amount. So we typically recommend that you drink water throughout the day. And of course, other liquids like milk that has calcium. But when it comes to diabetic drinks like diet soda, it does have sodium in it. So if you do have any heart issues, that could also raise your blood pressure. So with that question, I would say, again, just limited amount.
Can we hold parents responsible for infant obesity nowadays? I see kids in the mall just with a huge bag of potato chips and a Coke in their hand, and that's just not helping them with their health, right?
Yes, I agree. What I say to parents is, you're the one who has the money. You're the one who is purchasing the bag of chips or the soda or the Gatorades. You need to take control of making sure your child does not increase their weight or basically become obese, so you could reduce the risk of diabetes, heart disease, types of cancers in the future. So yes, it is the parents' responsibility to make sure that they prepare healthy meals, exercise with their kids, and just as a reminder is just to make sure they teach them the best that they can.
Well, what happens if we don't take note today and we don't change our habits? What are the worst complications that you've seen by far?
When you have diabetes and you do not control your diabetes, complications that I have seen is unfortunately blindness, kidney problems, which could lead to dialysis, amputation of their toes or their feet, and definitely heart attacks or strokes.
So there is a way to prevent this, correct?
Definitely. Eating healthy, exercising regularly, checking your blood sugars, and definitely keeping your appointments with your doctor.
Well, thank you very much. That's all the time we have for today. This was very, very informative. And I want to thank Jorge Gaspar from Vista Community Clinic and nutritionist Benilda Milan Aglagov, who were our experts today in this program of diabetes. Thank you to our viewers for watching this episode of Community Health Matters. Remember, you can watch this episode also on our many other programs anytime by going to koct.org. You can even share it with your friends and family. And please do, we have many great health services available right here in North County. I'm your host, Ricardo Berron, and this has been another edition of Community Health Matters. God bless you.
According to the American Heart Association, a normal blood pressure reading is less than 120/80. The top number, 120, indicates the pressure in the arteries when the heart beats, or systolic pressure. The lower number, 80, indicates the pressure in the arteries between heartbeats, or diastolic pressure.
Community Health Matters was made possible by a grant from the Tri-City Healthcare District and with additional support from Tri-City Medical Center.